If you're learning a new language, you probably often feel stuck, and you might even be asking yourself, am I doing this right? The truth is, you're probably making a lot of mistakes just like I did when I was learning 3 languages. Hello guys, if you're new here, I'm Emma, a trilingual teacher from Seattle, living in Spain. And in this video, I'm gonna share 5 of the mistakes that I made so that you don't have to. I started studying languages in university, and it took me about 4 years to become fluent in Spanish, and then it took me about 1 year to become fluent in Portuguese. Granted, Spanish and Portuguese are quite similar languages, so once I learned the structure of Spanish, it was easier for me to learn Portuguese. But I did make a lot of changes to my study plan, my study routine. I updated the apps that I was using, which I will share the apps that I use to learn languages at the end of this video. And I started researching some new techniques to more effectively learn languages. The first mistake that I made was focusing too much on grammar. In school, we're not taught the right way. I remember when I was studying Spanish in university, we spent most of the time trying to memorize grammar rules from textbooks, and I had notebooks on top of notebooks of the grammar rules of vocabulary. That was a lot of time wasted just trying to memorize grammar rules. I even learned how to use the subjunctive in Spanish, which tends to be very hard for English speakers. So I thought, I got this. I can speak fluent Spanish after studying for maybe 2 years, until I came to Spain for the first time. I remember the first week I was in Asturias in the north of Spain. I went to a little coffee shop to get a coffee, and I asked the man behind the counter, ¿Me puede dar un latte? Definitely in a worse accent and probably with some kind of grammar mistake. And it took this guy a moment to understand me, and he pointed to a board on the wall. He said, no. Esto es lo que tenemos. The only options were just a few options. I responded with something like, ¿No tienen lattes? And he was like, no. Very seriously, he was like, no. We only have coffee and milk. Solo tenemos café con leche. And it took me like 30 seconds to understand what he was saying to me because he was speaking very fast. And then to respond, I just said, sí, okay, sí. And I got a coffee with milk. And to this day, I still think about this situation and cringe because I was so ashamed to be that American who, first of all, only knows how to order Starbucks coffee, and second of all, because I couldn't communicate such a basic thing in Spanish. So I look back at that situation now and ask myself, what was the point of spending 4 years studying grammar, taking all these notes of conjugations, when I was put in a real life situation I couldn't even order a coffee? Another huge mistake that I made while studying Spanish was not practicing speaking from the beginning. And I think this actually might be one of the hardest things to overcome when learning a second language because we feel ashamed of making mistakes, we feel ashamed of our accent, we feel like we're gonna mess up, and we also suffer from mental blocks, right? That's what happened to me when I was ordering a coffee. I had this mental block and I had to really process like, what is this guy saying? And I definitely felt ashamed in that moment of not being able to speak and to simply order a coffee. Speaking in a new language will definitely make you feel nervous, but the sooner you start speaking, the sooner you'll be able to have conversations and you'll overcome that fear. Honestly, my biggest regret in my Spanish learning journey was not practicing from the beginning. I have family from Mexico, so I could have practiced with my aunts and my cousins, but I suffered from fear and shame. I was ashamed and I thought that they were gonna make fun of me for having an accent, which some of my cousins did, to be fair. I let that fear stop me from practicing, and it took me 4 years to learn Spanish when I could have learned probably when I was a kid or a teenager. So don't make the mistake that I did and don't wait to practice your speaking until you've been studying for like 3 years. Start practicing your speaking from the beginning and you'll just develop your confidence and learn the language so much more quickly. Actually, the significant change that I made between my Spanish studies and my Portuguese studies was I started taking speaking lessons, conversation lessons from the very beginning. And when I was taking Spanish lessons, I just relied on my classes, my weekly classes, looking over grammar textbooks and studying vocabulary. When I started studying Portuguese, I realized, okay, I need to change something. I need some speaking practice. So I started taking classes online with a tutor, a Brazilian tutor. and that helped me learn in 1 year as opposed to 4 years. Having a language tutor will just give you that space, that safe space online for you to practice your speaking with no judgment. And even if you're at the stage where you can't really say complex sentences yet, you will get there with the support of a good tutor. If you want to find a dedicated language tutor, I recommend you to try Lingoda, which is an online language school where you can take group and private lessons with professional teachers. And I feel super lucky to partner with Lingoda to offer you all a $25 discount on all of their courses. And their method is super effective because they don't just focus on grammar and vocabulary. They prioritize maximizing conversation time, which is totally crucial if you want to build your confidence and your communication in a second language. They also have super flexible plans, so whether you want to take 4 lessons or 20 lessons a month, you can do that. Go use that link in my description or in the pinned comments and you'll get $25 off your lessons with Lingoda. Alright guys, so let's move on to the next mistake that language learners make, the myth of multitasking. Nowadays, we all know how important it is to practice comprehensible input and study with content that's easy for us to understand. But the reason why you probably don't remember new words or new grammar structures is because you're multitasking while studying. Maybe you're scrolling through Instagram while watching a movie or responding to messages while listening to a podcast. But I have to share the cold, hard truth with you all. Multitasking doesn't exist. So when we're multitasking, our brains are really just switching very quickly between tasks. So that means that we're never really concentrated on the task at hand and we're wasting extra energy switching between tasks. And when we don't focus on the task that we're doing, on the book that we're reading, on the song that we're listening to, on the podcast episode, that's detrimental because we won't be able to really remember anything or really absorb the language that we're consuming. I learned this while listening to one of my favorite podcasts in Spanish called Psicología al Desnudo, which is narrated by a clinical psychologist. The psychologist was talking about how multitasking doesn't exist because our brain can really only focus on 1 or 2 maximum tasks at a time. In this episode, she says that multitasking makes us less productive and it makes us harder to remember the information that we're consuming. Ironically, while I was listening to this episode, I was washing the dishes. So I found myself rewinding multiple times throughout the episode to really understand what she was saying. And I'm not saying don't listen to podcasts while doing other tasks. I think that can be really helpful if you're washing the dishes or if you're, eating breakfast or driving in your car. If you also have music in your second language playing or if you're also listening to a podcast episode, I think that's super helpful. But there are times when we really need to just focus on one task, on one thing at a time to be able to really absorb and understand the information. This is the only way that you'll remember what you're learning long term. And this lesson was totally crucial for me because nowadays when I'm deep studying or deep working, I put my phone on airplane mode and leave it in another room so that it doesn't disturb me. This helps me get my work done quicker and this helps me really focus and take advantage of my study breaks. I think the most important and the most valuable thing that we can take control of nowadays is our attention span and our concentration, because there are thousands of apps and messages and emails and videos trying to rob our attention all the time. So if we can really train our brain to concentrate on one thing at a time, we will be able to take better advantage of our deep work sessions or our deep study sessions. This next mistake is so common among language learners, but before I share that with you, go give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know down in the comment section, what are some bad language learning habits that you want to improve? I briefly mentioned this in the previous point, but it's so important for you to practice active listening. The key to making movies and series, TV shows, and music a genuine and legitimate part of our study routine is by practicing active listening in order to really absorb the information. That means not multitasking, but being fully engaged with the content. A pro tip here would be to take notes of new words that are relevant for you in a dedicated notebook. Maybe make Anki flashcards or Quizlet flashcards. I personally prefer taking notes because that just works for me, but you should definitely explore whether taking notes works for you or whether flashcard apps work for you. Actively engage with the content that you're listening to. I don't mean that you should take note of every single word that's new, because there are some words that are unnecessary or irrelevant in your life. So your best bet is to take notes of words that are relevant in your life, words that you'll actually use. And focus on reviewing and acquiring these words that you could use in your daily language, not some super specific random word that you never use. And I get it, it's kind of a pain to pause every 5 minutes and take notes of new words and phrases. But remember, the point is not to understand every single word, it's to understand the main idea, and from that main idea, acquire a few new words and phrases. And there are tools that make this process easier for you. For example, Lingoda is a platform where you can watch series and different movies from Netflix, and you can follow along the transcript. If you see a new word, you can click that word and it will automatically give you the definition, the pronunciation. It will save those new words in flashcards for you to review later. I can go ahead and link that down below for you. Now, when it comes to this, I would also try the Pomodoro technique. I'm sure most of you probably are familiar with this, but the Pomodoro technique consists of doing a deep study session for 15 to 20 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. So this is going to give you a chance to refresh your mind, because we can only concentrate on a task for so long, and you can actually get quite a lot done in 15 to 20 minutes if you're deeply focused. So study hard for 15 to 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break, grab a tea, grab a coffee, stretch, whatever you need, and then go back to your study session. Make sure that you're focusing and actively listening to the content at hand. The final mistake is focusing on using ineffective language learning apps. One of the most frustrating things that happens to me as a language teacher is when I hop on a first call or a lesson with a student and they tell me, I've been studying English for years, or I've been studying Spanish for months and I just can't improve. And I ask them, well, how are you studying? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you reading in English or Spanish? And they say, no, I'm playing with Duolingo. Guys, please don't make the mistake of thinking that you can study for 10 minutes a day on Duolingo and you're gonna become fluent. Real fluency is achieved over a long period of time with more than 10 minutes of study a day. And I think Duolingo can be a great tool because it helps you create this habit of studying daily. But I'm sorry to break it to you guys, Duolingo's a game and you can learn a few new words here and there. I actually tried for the first time Duolingo when I started learning French, and it was just like playing video games. You can learn a few words here and there, but it's not the correct way to learn a language to fluency. I think gamification of learning can be good, and Duolingo has good tools for language learners. It's much more of a game rather than an effective language learning tool. And the problem with these apps is that they give you the false hope that you will achieve fluency if you study just 20 minutes a day. I mean, it took me 4 years to achieve fluency in Spanish, and that was studying for like 2 hours a day. Like I said, I think these apps can help you create the habit of studying every day, but just keep in mind that you're gonna need to study more than 10 or 20 minutes a day. My advice here is not to only use one resource, but to combine many different apps, many different resources to learn a language. So you don't have to give up on Duolingo. That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying try different apps to practice different kinds of skills. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually show you my language learning folder on my phone so that you all can see what language apps I use and what language apps I recommend. So this is my language learning folder, okay? I have Lingoda. This is for listening practice. It helps with vocabulary and also has daily challenges, much like Duolingo, but because I very much love watching series on Netflix in Portuguese, I love Lingoda. I also use Quizlet, not as much as I take notes, but Quizlet is good for vocabulary flashcards. And Link. I use Link for reading practice. This is a way for you to practice reading while listening to the transcript. You can click on the words and it will give you the definition. Those are my top 3 language learning apps: Lingoda, Quizlet, and Link. And also, I'm a big fan of writing in the language I'm learning and of podcasts. So those are other tools that I also use. So by combining these apps in my study routine, I'm able to work on reading, listening, and vocabulary and acquire grammar in a natural way. I'll say the only thing that's missing there is speaking practice. So I would recommend Lingoda. So I will link these tools for you down below so that you can try them out and maybe acquire some new tools for your language learning journey, guys. What resources do you use in your language routine? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, give this podcast a 5-star review. That will help me create meaningful and valuable content for you all. Thank you so much and see you next week.